Hello everybody, and today we're going to be talking about the His Fair Assassins trilogy by Robin LaFevers. Sure, let's go with that. LaFevers. The first book is Grave Mercy. There you go, you can see LaFevers. And so this actually started out as a trilogy, and Goodreads has marked out a fourth book called Courting Darkness that'll be coming out February 5th, 2019. So in like 4 months, there will be another book according to Goodreads. So now this trilogy, this is called His Fair Assassins trilogy, and this takes place back in Brittany before it was taken over by France, and it is actually while they are kind of at war with France. They're trying not to go to war with France, basically, but France keeps like lopping off parts of their country. So according to Goodreads, Brittany was an independent kingdom and then a duchy before becoming united with the Kingdom of France in 1532 as a province. So this is, I'm guessing, like the early 1500s when this is supposed to take place. And the culture is there, it's mostly Roman Catholic now because originally this started off as a Roman province and then became its own country eventually after Rome fell, etc., etc. So it's a Roman Catholic country, duchy. I think it's actually at the duchy phase in the books. And there were 13 old gods from back before Rome took over the area, and they are now considered saints in the Roman Catholic Church. But there are a handful of people, there's like an underground of people who still worship the old gods. And one of the old gods is Saint Mortagne, who is the patron saint of death, or the god of death. And he has daughters. He'll like lay with women, and then the women will have daughters of Mortagne. And these daughters are taken because they're basically cursed. No one will have anything to do with them. So they're taken to this abbey that's like on an island all by itself, where the daughters of Mortagne are taught how to be assassins, and then they can basically do his will. So he'll mark people for death, and the assassin will be able to see a mark on them, and then they know that the person's supposed to be murdered. So the trilogy, each book follows a different daughter of Mortagne, and each one of them plays a different part in the war against France. And so they are independent books with their own storyline, but the storyline is all intertwined, if that makes sense. So each book has like an ending for that daughter, but there's still the whole overarching situation with France looming, so that's not resolved. And in each book, a different part of that is addressed with a different daughter of Mortagne. These books are very fast-paced. They're young adult in the fact that each of the girls is like in their mid to late teens, if I remember correctly. And however, they are trained assassins who are going out and killing. So there is romance in each book. I will say that right now. But the girls they're not your typical teenagers. They are aged beyond their years, basically. And so these read like some sort of spy thriller with some romance in there, if that makes sense. Some historical spy thriller with some romance. So they kind of hit a bunch of different genres they touch on. There's like historical fiction with the war with France, and there's espionage out the wahoo, or is it wazoo? Out the wazoo? Espionage out the wazoo. Espionage for you and espionage for you and some spying here. And there's some mysticism and, or magic or whatever you want to call it. And so there's so much going on that the books are really fast paced. So the plot is slowly unveiled because it is an espionage book. So it's not very straightforward. You have a bunch of plot twists and you aren't ever quite sure who's on your side and who's not. And there is a lot of description in the books, but it comes in the form of dialogue, which seems like a weird way for it to happen, but that's the way the author wrote it, and it fits really well for the books. And because it's done conversationally, it doesn't feel heavy. So you get this great world building without it dragging the book down. I wrote that these were denser books. So there is a lot of description, there is a lot of world building, but like I said, the author does it conversationally. So even though there is a lot of meat to the books, they don't feel heavy when you're reading them. And the pace of the books doesn't suffer for it, if that makes sense. Each book has a straightforward plot line. It's each book follows a separate character. They're not three characters woven around in each book. It's not, there aren't multiple points of view within each book. It's this book follows this girl, while the others might be in it as secondary characters, and then the next book follows the second girl, and then the third book follows the third girl. So each book in and of itself has a straightforward plot line, but the overall trilogy has a layered plot line because you're getting the same event, more or less, from three different perspectives and three different angles that they're working at, trying to stave off the French. So I wrote that these were fast-paced, but not breakneck. And that, again, is due to there being a bunch of detail and description given, but it being conversational. So while it feels fast-paced and it goes quickly, it's not breakneck. There are some lulls, isn't maybe not the right word, but there are some, it's not action-packed constantly. The characters are developed over time, and a lot of that is through self-discovery. For each of these characters, I know for the first and the third one for sure, this is their first mission. And so a lot of it is, how are they going to handle this and how is it going to impact them as a person? And the second character, she is learning how to take some stuff that's happened to her and turn that into a weapon instead of it being a downside. So there's character development, not just in the characters being well drawn, but there's character development in the characters actually growing throughout the book, each book, which I really enjoy. It gives them a really nice depth and a sense of reality. Like you feel like these are real people, not just some sort of cardboard cutout that's been set up to work as a vehicle for the plot of the book or anything like that. They are eccentric characters. I mean, they are daughters of death who are trained assassins, and that's an eccentric thing. So if you are looking for characters who are realistic, these books are, in no way realistic. That's like expecting realism from Harry Potter. So the espionage part could have happened. I am not a historian who specializes in this at all, but in theory, these are all things that could have happened historically. The magic part obviously can't. So yeah, I wrote that they're eccentric characters because they have traits that are not something you would find in normal people. So if you are all about the realism in your but historical fiction, or if you are looking for an actual, like, just spy book, this has magic in it, so this isn't going to be the book for you. So while these characters are not realistic in the fact that they are obviously, magic is not real and no one is the daughter of death and, you know, that sort of thing, they are characters that you're supposed to be able to identify with. They are struggling with things that are understandable. So the characters are developed and drawn in such a way that they still feel like real people, not some sort of cartoon character or something. They are all dealing with some really intense, terrible things that have happened to them. I mean, we're talking like spousal abuse and rape and all kinds of terrible things that have happened to them. So it is, again, you're supposed to identify with them, and it's really, I mean, these are very bittersweet books. You watch them take all of this pain that they've had in their lives and kind of hone that into a weapon and learn how to make that a strength of theirs instead of a weakness. And again, that happens through the character development in the book. The storyline of these they are plot-centered books that are heavy on character development, but I would still consider them plot-forward books, not necessarily character-forward. Now, the plot is interesting because of all of the characters, so there is, like I said, a decent amount of character development, but I wouldn't consider these first and foremost a character book. Each book has its own unique romance situation. I don't think there are any like love triangles or anything, but there's, of course, in each one there's, you know, obstacles to be overcome and will they or won't they and that sort of thing. I mean, it is a YA trilogy. So for the frame and tone of these books, the background is this very detailed background of the 1500s and the Duchy of Brittany and this culture of magic and the old saints, and it's not, so Saint Mortain is the one obviously most heavily discussed in the book, but they do refer to some of the other ones. So you get a sense of this culture, and it's all underground and it's repressed, and so there's, you know, that going on as well. It's not the focus of the book, but it just kind of adds some more texture to the background. And the frame gives the tone of this book. Well, the frame makes the tone. You have this historical feel. They're darker books. I mean, they follow the Daughters of Death, so they're darker books. They're very bittersweet. Again, these women have all lived through hell and have learned to let that make them stronger. They're suspenseful. I mean, till the very last line of the book, you're not sure what's going to go on with France or not. Like, I don't want to say too much. It's full of historical details. I have absolutely no idea how accurate those details are or not, because I'd literally never heard of Brittany before I read these. And everything I could tell you, I learned from reading the Wikipedia page about it. So aside from being able to tell you roughly when this happened, I cannot tell you any details about what actually happened. So these are also romantic. I mean, they're pretty heavy on the romance for each one of them. And they're political. They're, I mean, chock full of political intrigue for each book. And, you know, you spend the entire time trying to figure out how they're going to stave off France. And FYI, as I already read from the Wikipedia page, in 1532, they succeeded into France. They became a part of France, so it does not go well. And I didn't give anything away because that's from Wikipedia. So I really enjoyed these books. Now for these books, I can't remember what the actual breakdown was, but I read at least one of them and then did book for at least one of them. And I did enjoy the audiobook. So if this is something you want to read or are interested in, the audiobook, no issues with. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So that was the His Fair Assassin Trilogy by Robin LaFevers. If you enjoyed this and want to make sure you catch all of my content, make sure to subscribe before you leave. And until next time, happy reading. Oh, shoot. Oh! Way no worse. So I looked it up. You get a sense of the... Why is this so hard? Man!